What is going on, everybody? How you all doing out there? I hope this video is finding you well. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrew, for those of you who do not know, and today I wanted to give you a little rundown on the Museum of Us found in San Diego's world-famous Balboa Park. This museum is one of 16, I believe, that actually does need to be paid for, even though there are a bunch of free museums out there as well. I went ahead and bought the annual pass that will allow me to check out all of these museums because I love museums, for anyone who knows that about me, and I'm really excited to be able to explore what San Diego has to offer in that category. So this Museum of Us was originally called the Museum of Man, but has now been renamed. Once you walk in, just like right off of the bat, you get this whole entire Mayan display, and for anyone who might have been around in 2012, you probably know a little bit about the Mayans, or really you might actually not know that much about them at the same time. This exhibit showed a lot of the different Mayan hieroglyphs that included the creation hieroglyph that talked about how the fourth cycle of time started. I think it was August of like 3700 BC or something like that, and I learned that the Mayans obviously were very obsessed with time, and I think that that whole December 2012 thing actually was meant to be the end of that fourth cycle of time and then the beginning of the fifth cycle of time, but who knows? Who is to say that that didn't actually happen and we all just didn't really notice? But the hieroglyphs and the art and everything about this exhibit was really interesting to me, and that massive painting that has actually been reproduced, I think it said, it was printed out on like 40 different pages that made it across the whole wall that it is, and I just loved that. Up the stairs then we get to the little exhibits about race, or whether or not race even exists. There is also a little part of the exhibit that is called Inter+FACE, because they had these portraits of people from, like, I think it said 1915, that were just defined by their skin color, and the models of the portraits never got to define themselves. So now they had a whole entire project where they photographed different people of different races and allowed them to define themselves, and also to discuss the types of preconceived notions that other people had about them based on their skin color. There's also the whole entire history about how the idea of race was really created in the first place, and how obviously it's more of a societal thing than it is anything else. One of my favorite exhibits in this museum was right behind the Inter+FACE exhibit, and it was the PostSecrets exhibit. So anyone out there might know about the PostSecrets. It's when people basically take postcards and write their deepest, darkest secrets, and it's an anonymous thing, and there was a book published in 2005 that kind of really set it all off after it was a blog. But here you are allowed to create your own postcard secret and share it, and I thought it was really awesome. There are thousands of postcards in there, but there are also multiple warnings that some of the postcard content can be a little sensitive to people, just depending on what it says, because it is really the opportunity for people to just share their deepest, darkest secrets. You can look through a lot of them, and I thought it was just really interesting, especially for the fact that you can create your own and become part of the exhibit yourself. You used to be able to, I think, order them online and send them in, but now you actually have to go into the museum itself to make these postcards, but they have a little station, and one day maybe I will go back and share mine. Right next to that one is a super interesting one about living with animals, because we all know that dogs are man's best friend. I have mine just right over here in the back. But it was very interesting to see the relationship of man and dog and how it has changed throughout time, because the cavemen used to share their meals with their wolves and all of that kind of stuff. And it said that dogs are man's best friend just kind of inherently, but then it was also talking about how cats are a result of city living and how we kind of created cats to be pets, whereas like a dog is more kind of naturally attached to a human. I don't know, it was very interesting. And it was talking about all the different colors that have been used for dogs throughout the years. It talked about how humans created pests such as cockroaches and pigeons and rats and all of that kind of stuff. So some of it was a little weird, and some of it was also kind of strange. I didn't get too into the parts of the animals that we eat, because there are also warnings there that there is some disturbing content for people who might be sensitive to that. I don't know. I wasn't trying to get too grossed out today. I just thought all of this was really interesting, so I just wanted to learn a little bit more about our life with animals. You also have the opportunity of going into ancient Egypt, which I love. I love everything about ancient Egypt, from the sphinxes to the pyramids to the sarcophagi and everything in between. And it's crazy because the coffins that are in this exhibit actually do contain human remains, which is like always so weird to think about. But a few years ago they actually did have to remove some of the remains, just because they talk a lot about respect and how to care for these remains, because they don't have a choice in what happens to people in the afterlife. And anyone who knows anything about the ancient Egyptian culture knows that they took the afterlife very seriously, which is why they mummified the bodies and had all of these rituals and ways that they buried them, because they wanted to make sure that the souls of the people were preserved in the afterlife. And so I just love being able to go through anything Egyptian. And it's also right next to the exhibit about the Kumeyaay people. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but Kumeyaay, I'm not all the way sure, but they were the indigenous peoples that lived in this portion of California here in San Diego. They still have a presence here, and it's always been really interesting for me to learn about Native American history, from basket weaving to the pottery that they did and just their general way of life. But one of my favorite things from this particular exhibit was the cosmology section, which is all about the stars, and it is the first exhibit that exists for the Kumeyaay people and their depiction of cosmology. They essentially have the same types of constellations that we know, like the Gemini and Big Dipper and Orion and all of that, but they have their whole own culture and names and everything around that. And I love astronomy. I love looking at the stars. I love learning about the stars. I taught astronomy at Boy Scout camp long time ago, so I really loved that part of the display. I will admit that the biggest surprise exhibit for me was the BEERology one. I was not necessarily expecting for the Museum of Us to have a whole entire section about beer, but beer is very ingrained in society and culture, apparently. I learned that China has the oldest beer, that the Incas drink beer in the afterlife and have corn beer, and I learned that the ancient Egyptians used to pay their laborers in a gallon of beer a day, and Amazons drink beer, and the Mesopotamians drink beer, and everybody just drinks beer. I had no idea that that was such a huge part of humankind, just the idea of beer, which honestly now I guess it does make a little bit of sense as to why there are so many breweries these days. I mean, they pop up all over the place, everywhere you go. The beer culture in the present day is apparently just as popular as the beer culture has always been, which I really was not expecting that at all. And last up, we have right across the street from the main part of the museum is the Cannibal exhibit, which was very interesting. I don't know, it's not gory, but it is a little unsettling and disturbing in its own right. But it was also just really interesting, because you just, from the get, I mean, you walk in and you see like the Silence of the Lambs and American Psycho and all of those movies where people eat human flesh, and you think of them, it talks about how you put cannibals into a category if you already think they're evil or they're gross or they're this or that. But then there's all of these situations throughout the years that are more than just like the Donner Party that we all know about, that really talks about empathy in a way where it asks you to put yourself into the shoes of these cannibals and wondering if you would really do the same thing if you were in their position. And I don't know, it was so crazy. There was also little exhibits about the pygmy cannibal, who is this little kid who was part of a freak show who would eat people, and they even have a section where they list all these different body parts and they ask you like to place it, like if you had to consume like a booger, does that make you a cannibal? cannibal or is that a not cannibal thing? And they had a whole history of cannibalism throughout the years. They discussed how apothecaries would use various bits of humans, like human fat and blood and all of that, for different therapies and remedies. And I don't know how to say this, but I really want to go back to that exhibit, and I just want to go spend so much time there, and I want to read absolutely everything because it was so interesting, even though it was also so disgusting at the same time. But the Museum of Us was definitely worth the experience. I'm super glad that I got the annual pass so I can go back there anytime. Again, I'm super excited about all of the other museums that I will be able to experience out at Balboa Park, and all of the other museums just in general. This week I will be going out to Oceanside, so my next week's vlog video like this is actually going to be about museums that I visit up there. But I'm super stoked about all of that because I love museums, and they've got the Air and Space Museum here, they have the Museum of Art, they've got museums of photography and all sorts of stuff. So I cannot wait until I can go and check out all of these museums and just get my nerd on in all of those. So there it is. Thank you all so much for joining me today. If you liked this video, I would love it if you considered giving it a little thumbs up, as well as potentially pressing on that little subscribe button to join me for more adventures that aren't going to all be about museums, but it is going to be some of the content that I have putting out here. And if you are not already on my website at lifeinanotherworld.com, you can follow the link in the description box to check out my write-up of this museum and get a little bit more details on the exhibits and links and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you all again so much for watching. I appreciate all of your time, and until the next one, I hope you all have a day just as beautiful as you. See you next week. Bye.